You see it in the title, right? Is the Samsung S95b the best possible television for the Sony PlayStation 5? And as a quick disclaimer, first and foremost, I will say that looking at the video footage back, it is not this dark in person. And what I mean by that, there is some crushing of the blacks when looking at the playback for the footage. And I'll tell you that I used the Sony A7S III to record this footage. I'm using a Sigma 24x70 lens, and the settings that I have it on is manual focus with the exposure ranging from anywhere from 2500 to 5000, if you will, and that's just depending on the content. For instance, take a look at this scene here. You can see a lot of very dark scenes as you would expect with an OLED. However, there's a lot more specular highlights that you can see in person, and so the blacks aren't completely crushed like this. In person, there's a lot more detail in those dark areas, and that stems from the inability to have as much dynamic range as the HDR content would show on the television. The camera cannot keep up with that, and so that's why people always say you never actually get exactly what you're seeing on the screen being captured on the camera unless you're having a lot more expensive system. And even at $4,000 plus, this one isn't going to pick up all of that information. And so from there, now that we have that out the way, let's jump into the gaming. So let's address the elephant in the room, if you will. Take a look at this scene here. As we all know, the Sony PlayStation 5 does not support Dolby Vision gaming, and for a lot of you, that's not a big deal. Recently in the comments, I've seen that Dolby Vision isn't necessarily a deal breaker for a lot of people. Now, for somebody like myself that has always used an LG OLED, Dolby Vision is definitely something that I've gotten used to. And let's break down real quickly what that is. Dolby Vision gaming allows for perfect colors, saturated colors, while also keeping fast action, response times, and low input lag. And so for most people, it's not a problem. But for me, where it comes into play is that for a lot of games, I'm not always comfortable with the color settings, if you will, or the presentation, if you will. And so I'll pause sometimes and I'll be like, oh, this scene is too dark. And so let me go and, brighten it. Let me go and change the color, the tone, not tone mapping, but the color temperature. Let me go change the contrast enhancer. Let me go change the peak brightness. It's something that, because I've gotten used to gaming with Dolby Vision gaming on the LG television along with the Xbox Series X, coming back to PlayStation with a television like this, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many colors now. There's so many different things that I can do with this particular picture. It sometimes drives me insane, and I end up changing the picture over and over again depending on what content I'm playing. Whether it's a dark scene, dark based game like the Miles Morales scene just a second ago, or if it's something like this, which is Ratchet and Clank, and there's a lot of, daylight gaming, for lack of better terms, a lot of bright scenes with a lot of dynamic range and a lot of popping colors. And so, I play around with these settings a lot. That's not a bad thing per se, right? I'm actually not opposed to having a lot of options. That may vary depending on the user, but what I will say is that the PlayStation is focused on HDR tone mapping, and that's actually a feature that they've promised for the new upcoming Sony Bravia televisions. And so they are saying that those Sony Bravia televisions are the perfect match for the PlayStation 5 because they're going to naturally be able to match the tone mapping on the console along with the television, because those two, of course, are not made under the same banner within the company, but they are underneath the same umbrella. And so maybe that would render Dolby Vision unneeded. But regardless of the scene, whether it's a dark scene or a bright scene, one thing that is for sure is that the Samsung S95 freaking kills it. And so Obviously, with it being an OLED, it has perfect blacks, but also with it being a quantum dot display, it has these vibrant colors. And there's a lot of debate on that right now, but that's not important for this video. But what is important for this video is that all of that technology comes together and makes an amazing experience and picture. And obviously there's other televisions on the market like the LG C2 and G2 that are going to do well as well, but man, this television will flat out surprise you scene after scene after scene. And so let's look through some of the games that are popular with the PlayStation 5, and we can determine whether or not, you know, this TV is a slam dunk for the PlayStation 5. A consistent thing with PlayStation content is that it's poppy, meaning that there's always a good picture. That's one of the things that you expect coming from a PlayStation 5 exclusive, if you will. There's always this great mix of contrast and color and storytelling and fast action and lifelike scenes that make the PlayStation library, if you will, you know, alive. Think of games like God of War and Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon Forbidden West. I mean, these are the type of games that wow you with the content. Again, the story is always cinema-like. The gameplay is always almost close to realistic as possible, depending on the engine used and the style of game, if you will. But when you think of games like this one, Horizon Forbidden West, or Returnal, Ghost of Tsushima, etc., they always follow this very consistent picture quality, if you will. Again, brights, contrast, isolation of characters, a cinema-like experience. And so you drop yourself and those cinema-like experiences into this particular television, the Samsung S95b, and it checks all the boxes that are needed for this particular type of content. The true blacks, the dynamic range in HDR and brightness with up to 1500 nits of brightness. It has the embedded Dolby Atmos sound, if you will, that will bring the play to life, if you will, by the sound and the soundtrack. And just, you know, despite all of the, I guess, current controversy over the colors and whether or not they're accurate, this television will give you the most punchy colors possible. And playing, you know, games like the Ghost of Tsushima and these type of scenes where red and orange and, you know, vivid blues and colors like that are present, this TV really brings that content to life. And it's extremely interesting that, you know, the Sony A95k is coming out pretty soon, but I'm not sure if it's going to actually do the same thing that Samsung has done with its colors and how poppy they are. And I know that's not a real word, but even if it's not as accurate as other televisions would be. And so, you know, I sit back and I think about the, you know, the way that Sony typically will process their video, if you will, and it is typically closer to cinematic or theatrical intent, if you will, or the director's intent, the creator's, editor's intent, as opposed to this very artistic, you know, punch of colors that Samsung typically would do. And keep in mind, that's kind of what makes the QD QLED, it's even hard to say it now that QD-OLED is out. That's what makes the QLEDs, you know, hard to resist, is because of how bright and punchy the colors are. And that's kind of what Samsung has sold, you know, their displays for, you know, over the last couple years. But for the first time, Samsung is able to offer something in this new QD-OLED that they have not been able to offer before, and that is those bright punchy colors with the true black of OLED technology, if you will. And so for the first time, you're going to start seeing scenes like these where it is true black and you still have that punch of color, and you're able to again, keep in mind that you're not seeing everything that I see in person. I guess the camera's not picking up that much range, but again, they're able to offer now these true black scenes while adding punches of color in the flames and create this dramatic experience while gaming. And so getting back to, is this the best television for PlayStation? I mean, it's kind of hard to say that until the Sony A95k comes out. But what I will say is that this TV will freaking shock and awe you at the picture that it produces. But getting back to the real reason we're here, it's not just the picture that's going to awe you. This television and gaming on this television is also going to awe you. Not only is the picture going to be beautiful, dramatic, colorful, saturated, and true blacks, it's also going to play very well because this is a 4K 120 hertz television, if you will. HDMI 2.1 full bandwidth, 48 gigabytes per second, HDMI ports with Dolby Atmos sound tracking built in, and auto low latency mode, along with VRR and all of the bells and whistles that you would expect in a top of the line, top of the market, next gen console gaming television. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself in saying that this is the best television for PlayStation 5, because again, I know the Sony A95k is coming out soon, but everything that you're able to do with this particular television at this point, because Dolby Vision isn't a real thing for the PlayStation 5, I don't think that you necessarily have to wait on the Sony A95k. Now keep in mind the Sony A95k will have the auto, I forget what they're calling it, but auto tone mapping, basically, where it will match automatically with the PlayStation 5 as mentioned earlier and try to display what the HDR content is intended to display. But that is the only real gaming feature that it has outside of the built-in, obviously, HDMI 2.1 ports, etc. But it will not have the actual game mode and gaming bar like the Samsung S95b. And depending on the way that Sony automatically processes its colors using its new XR cognitive processing unit, it may not be the picture that you want. And so this Samsung S95b will give you the most autonomy of your own color space, or color representation, if you will, and how you want that game to play. And so it will be interesting, and I am trying to wrap this up before this video becomes a 20-minute just talking session, if you will. And so I'm anxious to hear your thoughts and comments in the section below. As always, I'll be in the comments along chatting with you all. Been some great conversations recently, and with all the controversy happening right now around the Samsung S95b and whether or not the color is accurate, I'm wanting to know your thoughts on that, and if it even matters to you, because if you're primarily a gamer, maybe that's not as important to you as it would be for somebody that's going to be using this for cinema. All I can say is that gaming on the PlayStation 5 has been just flat out amazing. You know, obviously, again, with the exclusives the way that they are within the PlayStation 5 ecosystem, you're getting nothing but top-notch experience with this particular television. And because of the QD-OLED, the vibrant colors and saturated colors, this is an experience you haven't gotten from any television before. Like it or love it, hate it or you know, or not, or whatever you have, this may be the best PlayStation 5 television on the market in 2022, despite the fact that there's one coming out from Sony here shortly in the next month or so. So, anxious to hear your thoughts. Looking forward to chatting with you in the comment section below. And as always, stay cozy in that crazy world, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.